No more games. Gazprom says Ukraine will pay the European prices for Russian gas. It set the rate at $418 per 1,000 cubic meters, almost doubling a previous offer, which Kyiv failed to accept before the new year.
Ukraine didn't accept the preferable gas price we offered, which was $250 per 1,000 cubic meters. So starting from January 2009, Gazprom will deliver gas to Ukraine at a market European price.
There is still no contract signed between the two countries. Before that can happen, Gazprom is insisting outstanding debts are paid in full. The energy giant calculates Ukraine owes $600 million in penalties. But Kyiv is also holding out for a new price for transporting Russia's gas through its territory on its way to Europe. The dispute is nothing new in recent Russian-Ukrainian relations and echoes events of 2005, when Kyiv enjoyed low tariffs inherited from the Soviet times, while Europe paid market rates. After the supplies were stopped, Ukraine's stole gas headed for the EU. Some experts believe history may repeat itself.
It is interesting, though, from a political standpoint, to see that there's been some talk of siphoning off gas that's destined for Western Europe, at the same time that this particular country is talking about joining the EU and joining NATO. It's a bit confusing, frankly, to most of my colleagues in London and in Paris, is why someone who wants to join NATO, perhaps, or the EU, would be siphoning gas from its fellow EU members. It's a bit strange, but in any event, the facts is that Ukraine gets discounted gas. And no one else in Europe gets, other than Belarus, gets gas at those prices.
Ukraine has already taken 2 large loans from the national banks to repay part of their debt. Now it's unlikely that the country will be able to raise more to pay the new price set by Gazprom. Zinaida Medvedeva, RT, Moscow.
And there have been some reports that Ukraine might start siphoning off gas destined for Europe. So RT has placed its correspondents at key stages in the gas journey from Russia to the West. And our correspondent Daria Pushkova is monitoring the situation in Austria at one of Europe's biggest gas distributing stations.
Baumgarten gas station that you can see right behind me is one of Europe's most important gas hubs. At present, around 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas is distributed from here to European customers. At the moment, around 35% of Russian gas is passing through this station, with Europe importing about a quarter of its gas needs to the European from Russia, with Germany and Italy being the main customers of Gazprom within the European Union. At the moment, Europe is very much preoccupied with Ukraine's reaction. The main concern is that Ukraine would respond to a freeze in its supplies by siphoning the gas or the energy meant for Europe. That's the main cause of concern, and that if that happens, that is going to be immediately clear here at the Baumgarten gas station, because the pressure in the gas pipelines is going to fall down. At the moment, we don't see that happening, but we have to wait and see.
Our correspondent Daria Pushkova in Austria. And on home soil near the Russia-Ukraine border, Gazprom is trying to ensure Europe receives unhindered supplies. Leah Ferguson reports.
Gazprom has stated that it will do its utmost to fulfill its obligation in terms of European gas supplies, and it's very conscious of its commitment to Europe. What it has done is not just turned the taps off completely. There is still gas flowing into Ukraine, but that is the portion of gas which is intended for Europe. They have just stopped the other portion of gas intended for Ukrainian domestic use only. The problem is that most of this gas going to Europe flows through Ukraine, through Ukrainian pipelines, and it's then up to the Ukrainians to re-export it to Europe. Gazprom are fearing now that Ukraine may try to siphon off some of that gas, as it's been left with none. There are concerns among energy experts about that. Instead, Gazprom has decided to increase the amount of gas intended for Europe just in case this happens, and they say that this will ensure that Europeans don't see any shortfall.
Our correspondent Leah Ferguson there. Now, meanwhile, Ukraine is looking to the West to solve the situation, and its foreign ministry is sending a delegation to Europe to discuss supplies of Russian gas to the EU. And as Alexei Oshevsky reports, Europe might still experience some difficulties.
We've heard indication from the Naftogaz company, the Ukrainian gas monopolist, that all gas supplies to Europe will not be affected by the fact that Russia cut its supplies to the country at 10 a.m. Moscow time today on Thursday. At the same time, the company stresses that there is a number of difficulties which still leave a room for threat for the Russian gas supplies to Europe to be affected in the future, and those difficulties have to be somehow regulated, somehow to be resolved in the course of negotiations in the next couple of days at the Gazprom headquarters in Moscow. At the same time, the chairman of the delegation of Naftogaz, Oleg Dubina, who is also the chairman of the Naftogaz company, said at the press conference early in Kiev that Europe has already received less gas than last night due to the fact that Russia cut its supplies. But he stressed that this was a temporary difficulty, and this is nothing to worry about. This is just a technical problem which will be resolved within the next 24 to 48 hours. No, Naftogaz company stresses that it does not want to undermine its reputation in Europe, and that all supplies to Europe will be fulfilled in accordance with the memorandum signed in Moscow in April 2007. We spoke to the press secretary, the spokesperson of the Naftogaz company, Mr. Zemlyansky.
Starting today, Ukraine has begun using its own stored gas. Our reserves are going to last us until April, that is until the end of the heating season. European gas consumers have not been affected as transit gas has not been used. At the moment, Naftogaz administration is holding consultations with the President's office and the government, since yesterday's talks did not bring any results. Just like Gazprom, we want to solve this problem as quickly as possible.
Well, it's so far unclear when will the negotiations continue, what time exactly, but we've heard from Gazprom that presumably the talks in Moscow will start at 11 o'clock a.m. Moscow time, which is 10 o'clock Kiev time, and of course much will be clear where will the situation go from then after we hear about the